a relief to do that again, too. We lost so many people. Thank you, Yvonne. Good morning. I'm Dave Keegan, and I am a member of this church. To those of you here in the chapel, to those of you joining us online, welcome. Whether you are new to our church or a longtime member, please know that you are welcome here. Whatever faiths you have known, if any, you are welcome here. Whatever your personal beliefs, you are welcome here. Whomever you love, you are welcome here. Whatever brought you through these doors or to your computer screen today to worship with us in community, we are so glad that you have joined us. I have two brief announcements. Next Sunday, June 5th, following the service, Reverend Christian Schmidt and Ann Richards will hold a time of reflection and community support for children and families in response to the recent gun violence. The gathering will be from 11 a.m. to 11:30. It will be held here in the chapel. In the meantime, both Reverend Schmidt and Miss Ann are available to talk to anyone in need of assistance in processing these recent horrific events. As always, all ages are welcome in our service, but you should know that today's service may include material that is sensitive and may not be appropriate for younger children particularly. We trust you'll make the right decision for you and your family. Leading our service today will be Evan Wallach. Evan was a combat engineer reconnaissance sergeant in Vietnam in 1970. He later served as a judge advocate officer practicing international law during the Persian Gulf War. He writes and teaches about the law of war. He has been a member of this church since 2019. Evan?
As we light this chalice, may its flame rekindle memories and light the way for hopes for the future.
Let's see. So the introit.
far as any eye can see, they stand on guard in serried ranks. They stood to change our history. We stand now here to give them thanks. A lifetime past they gave their youth, called by their nation on their king, impelled by some eternal truth. They kept the torch of freedom's flame. Before they served, their fathers fought. Their children went to later fights. But there was something special bought by those who scaled the darkest height, by those who rushed ashore from boats onto a beach of mines and shells, past the bodies cast to float into a day of living hell. As far as any eye can see, the tombstones stand in serried ranks. They stood to change our history. We stand now here to give them thanks. They built the fires we must still stoke. A few stand here, old men now, bent now perhaps, but they never broke. And freedom's wreath still grace their brow.
Please stand in body and spirit as you are able to join us in our opening hymn, number 27, I Am That Great and Fiery Force.
As this hymn may be less familiar, Yvonne will play it through once before we sing.
Please remain standing as we recite our covenant, found within our hearts, in our order of service, and in the back of our hymnal. Love is the teaching of this church. The quest of truth is its daily task, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve life in community, to the end that all souls shall grow in harmony with our covenant with each and with all. And now it is time for our Time for All Ages.
Meaning of Memorial Day, based on an article in Time for Kids. Many people celebrate the beginning of summer with a party or a barbecue on Memorial Day. But that's not all that Memorial Day is about. It has the word memorial in it for a reason. General John A. Logan started Decoration Day on May 30th of 1868 as the day to decorate the graves of Civil War soldiers. After World War I, people started calling it Memorial Day. This is a photo of President Harry S. Truman putting a wreath on the tomb of the unknown soldier at Arlington Cemetery. It was President Truman that issued a proclamation in 1950 telling Americans to use Memorial Day to pray for peace. President Nixon declared it a federal holiday in 1971, and most businesses and schools are closed on that day. Now, Memorial Day is always the last Monday in May. It is the day when the U.S. military members who died in American wars are honored. One respected tradition is for the president or vice president to visit Arlington Cemetery and give a speech. This is a picture of President Biden and Vice President Harris at Arlington Cemetery. Here are some ways you can honor those who served our country for Memorial Day. You could decorate the graves of people who died in wars. You can fly the U.S. flag at half-mast until noon. Half-mast means halfway up the flagpole, and it's a way of showing respect. You may want to visit memorials and monuments. This is the photograph of the dedication plaque on the Navy and Marine Memorial. It's on George Washington Memorial Parkway along the Potomac River on the way to Mount Vernon. Some people like to participate in the National Moment of Remembrance, an annual event that asks Americans, wherever they are at 3 p.m. on Memorial Day, to pause for a duration of 1 minute to remember those who have died in military service to the United States. For example, all baseball games stop at that time, and trains across the country blow their whistles. You could march in a Memorial Day parade, or go to watch one. We're lucky because we live near many famous monuments and memorials. We could even attend the National Memorial Day concert, which is held on the west lawn of the U.S. Capitol. If you can't be there in person, you can watch it on PBS at 8 p.m. You could also ask if there's anyone who died in a war in your family that you haven't heard about. You might ask questions to learn more about that relative and what war they died in. No matter how you choose to spend your time tomorrow, we hope you'll take a moment to think about what Memorial Day really means.
We have come now to our offertory, and I invite this gathered community to offer your generosity in spirit and financial support for the mission of this church. If you're writing a check for the offering, please make it to MVUC and write in the memo line what you would like the check to be used for. I suggest you write share in the memo line, which will confirm that you want the check to be shared the same as cash. Mount Vernon Unitarian Universalist Church continues to share the plate with committed organizations that you, our members, have chosen. During the month of May, our offering is being shared 50-50 with the Katie Tyson Fund. The Katie Tyson Fund for Youth and Young Adult Ministries exists to kindle the spirits and the sparks of leadership among Unitarian Universalist youth and young adults. The fund supports scholarships, grants, and youth and young adults projects, conferences, outreach, and more. Raised here at MVUC, Katie had become a rising leader in the UU movement. She had aspirations of becoming a minister. Filled with enthusiasm, passion, and excitement, she worked tirelessly to make our world and her community a better place. Sadly, Katie's life ended on a highway in Colorado when she was killed in a crash. She was only 21. Katie's late parents and members of this church, Karen and Herb Tyson, were longtime MVUC members. They had a vision for youth and young adults to be empowered to live out their dreams, to weave our Unitarian Universalist principles into the fabric of their expanding lives, and to encourage others to do the same. With the support of MVUC, the Joseph Priestley District of the UUA, and other generous donors, in 2010, Karen and Herb established the Katie Tyson Fund for Youth and Young Adult Ministries. Your generosity will continue to fuel this vision and will honor Katie's legacy of hope and love. This fund supports youth and young adult ministries at the regional and national level, as well as need-based travel subsidies. And this is just one of the things that this church is doing. And if you ask me why I continue to support the church, it's for looking to the future as this fund does. So thank you. And we welcome your offering at this time. If you would like to light a candle to recall or honor a joy or sorrow, you are welcome to come forward at this time.
Please take a moment to prepare yourself for our time of silent reflection. Every week, as in our service we pause for meditation and prayer, I am reminded of the training I received as an Army major. Our colonel announced that we officers would all learn to meditate. Amidst the laughter, he said, "I thought you might be skeptical, so I had the medics bring in equipment to measure your blood pressure." It was, to say the least, startling to see my numbers drop sharply as I tried breathing and meditation exercises he taught us. "Someday, ladies and gentlemen," he said, "this little trick is going to save your lives and the lives of your command when you calm yourselves in the midst of combat." An odd thing to consider as we meditate and pray, perhaps, but it works for me.
Please remain seated as we do our hymn number 336, "All My Memories of Love."
Yvonne will play it through once. All my memories of love hang upon my stars. All the souls I've lost to tears now the autumn jars. And the air around me here thickens with their song. Sing again their nameless tune, sing again and strong. Willows in September touch the water clear, set among the rushes tall of the flowing year. Rising up from sunlit past comes the shadowed side, running tardy silently, love to fortify. Many are the graceful hearts hung upon this tree, and it seems there's room for mine on these branches free. And the sky above the tree, whether red or bright, is my peace and comforting, my good news and light.
Our reading this morning comes from Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes. Although we all think of him as a justice of the United States Supreme Court, he was also a soldier, an officer in the Civil War. And in 1884, he was invited to give a Memorial Day speech in Keene, New Hampshire. And he described his emotions as a Civil War veteran on Memorial Day. "As surely as this day comes round, we are in the presence of the dead. For 1 hour, twice a year at least, at the regimental dinner where the ghosts sit at the table, more numerous than the living, and on this day, when we decorate their graves, the dead come back and live with us. I see them now, more than I can number, as once I saw them on this earth. They are the same bright figures, or their counterparts, that come also before your eyes. And when I speak of those who were my brothers, the same words describe yours.
All the world may and the poets say, in fire or in ice it might. But I'm here to say, at the end of the day, it will freeze to death in the night. I've seen men go when their time was nigh, and I've come close once or twice. But of all of the ways that a man has to die, what scares me most is the ice. You go to sleep and the commies creep closer to your frozen post. The night is dark and the cold so deep, you could half give up the ghost. Melt your body in the hole, eyes wide awake to guard you while you rest. And you have to believe with lives at stake that he's gonna do his best. Then you're home in bed in a soft warm dream when their bugles blare in the wire. Your body opens up, you hear him scream, and the whole line starts to fire. The flares all pop with a harsh white light as the first artillery shell lands in their ranks. You give silent thanks that you might live through this hell. But then again, with 1,000 men coming through your company wire, they might get through at least to you, and the world might end in fire. Now it's Willie Pete, and you feel the heat as the shells burst over their heads. They scream in pain and blow retreat, and those Chinese troops are dead. So you've lived to tell for another night, but there were men hurt in your line. You hear them moan as they lie in fright, and the moan dies down to a whine. Medic, they scream, we've a wounded man, and you whisper to your body, I'll go. He says not a thing when you grab his hand, and his breath is coming awful slow. Without a sound, he took that round. Is there something you can do to save? He dies in the night, his face sheet white, and his hand is cold as a grave. I've seen men go when their time was nigh, and I've come close once or twice. But of all of the ways that a man has to die, what scares me most is the ice.
One of our guiding principles as Unitarian Universalist is a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. What is the meaning of Memorial Day? Can we find a larger truth behind its pomp, chauvinism, and commercialism? In the early fall of 1968, when I had just begun my sophomore year in junior college, I lived at home. My parents' front door had a sheet of ripple glass next to it, through which one could see shapes and colors, but no more. One afternoon, I heard an insistent pounding and came hurrying from where I'd been reading. My tiny mother had her back to the door, and panic was on her face. The pounding continued. "Who is it, Mom?" I asked. "They're out there." "Who's out there?" "They're out there." There was desperation in her voice. Through the ripple glass, I could see someone of military bearing, dressed in marine dress greens. Suddenly, I knew what she meant. My older brother, on his second tour in Vietnam, had dropped out of contact for months. He had been due to come home, but then we heard nothing. "We have to open the door, Mom." "No." "Mom, we have to talk to them." "No." I reached past her to open the door, and she hit me. I think it was the first time she ever had, certainly with anything other than a swat on the behind. I pushed and pulled her aside while she continued to swing. She was small enough so she couldn't really hurt me, but she tried. I opened the door. Standing there with his arm in a cast and his Marine uniform cut away to accommodate it was my brother Andy. Mom was sobbing hysterically. Why would anyone put those they love through that terror? I thought about that a lot when I enlisted later that year. Why do we do it? Why do we take the chance? Why do we die? Today, we remember those who died in our nation's armed conflicts. What is it that imperiled those mostly young people to place their lives at risk and to terrorize those they most loved by doing so? More to the point, on this day of memorializing those who not only risked all, but lost all, what led them to that place? Karl von Clausewitz, the great German theoretician of war, teaches that courage and self-reliance are principles quite essential to war. Can those be taught to the average soldier? I would say they can, for knowledge of what to do is really a large part of both courage and self-reliance. During my basic combat training, when we were taught to fire on full automatic in bursts of 3 rounds, counting 5 bursts, and changing the magazine after those 5 so we would never come up with an empty weapon, I remember thinking, that'll never happen. I had read S.L.A. Marshall's theory that fewer than 25% of soldiers actually fire their weapons in combat. And I imagined that at best, I'd close my eyes and fire a full magazine. Imagine my surprise when I found myself in combat, counting bursts and changing magazines just as I'd been taught. Partly, I'd say, because courage and self-reliance is based on training, on knowing what to do when the moment comes. For the rest, I believe it is based on discipline and self-confidence. When I was in law school to earn some income, I joined a basic infantry training unit, what the outside world calls drill sergeants. The drill sergeant school at Fort Ord, California, taught me quite a bit about discipline. The bottom line was that give me the average 18-year-old for 8 weeks, and I can turn them into someone who learns the value of self-discipline. Out of that knowledge and discipline, and from being an 18-year-old, comes self-confidence. In Southeast Asia, during the monsoon seasons, it rains a lot. I used to joke with my buddies that I could run from bunker to bunker around the raindrops without getting wet. Of course, I got soaked. But that wasn't the point. I really believed it, in a way. I was invulnerable. It wasn't that I couldn't get hurt. It was that I was so good at what I did that I wouldn't get hit. Even when I did. When I ran through a rainstorm carrying an unconscious soldier to a bunker, and a rocket exploded in front of us, and we both landed in a ditch full of water with him on top, I really believed I was too good at what I did, too much of a pro, to really get knocked out of combat. That courage and self-reliance was learned and absorbed. It made me literally run through the night to the sound of the guns when there was a ground attack outside our sector. It made me volunteer for every reconnaissance mission which came up, sneaking down jungle trails in Cambodia in the enemy's rear areas, flying in the doorway of a Huey with my boots hanging over the side, rifle in hand, looking for enemy targets, waking in the middle of the night as the rockets struck our fire base, and crawling out of my bunker to the awful realization that the main bunker next to us had collapsed, and there was a North Vietnamese soldier fighting his way through the concertina wire to get inside our line. Why did we do these things? Why did we carry 90-pound loads through elephant grass in 99% humidity and 113-degree temperatures? Why patrol through rice paddies with the rain pouring down, water above our knees, sick with dysentery, shaking from fever, and waiting for the bullets to force us down in that foul water? Why, in short, did some of us do those things and die? Last Veterans Day, I told you we did it for love of our brethren in arms, and indeed we did. We also did it because we believed in ourselves, in our comrades, in the backup we had from other units. We did it because we believed it was our duty to each other and to our nation. The one thing that constantly terrified me was not dying, but my mom getting the notification of my death. I wrote to her every day. I have those letters. Largely, they are lies by omission. I just didn't tell her what I was doing. My dad was a combat vet of World War II, a combat engineer company commander. Once in a while, I would write to him and tell him what I thought were the coolest things. When I was hit, I sent to him at his office a photo of myself with cuts on my face and 2 beautiful black eyes. I was 20 years old. It never occurred to me that my dad would, of course, share those materials with Mom. Eventually, of course, the dam breaks. We make that one mistake. We get careless. We get overconfident. In my case, I got drunk. It was my 21st birthday, November 11th, 1971. Our battalion commander had a policy of letting us take the day off. Mom had sent me a cake in a metal can. When I opened it that morning, it was clear that she had poured a bottle of rum into the cake. I called my buddies, and we sat around on the ground, tearing off pieces and getting buzzed. My lieutenant walked by and said, "Sergeant, I know it's your birthday, but the infantry just captured an NVA bunker complex off Highway 1. We're going to blow it. Would you mind going along to take photos?" "Part of the job, sir." The problem was I didn't drink, and that cake had me tipsy. So I let my guard down, just that once. I grabbed my cameras, my M16, a couple of bandoliers of magazines, and jumped in his Jeep. No grenades, no helmet, no pistol, not the 30 magazines I usually carried. I just wasn't thinking. We were right in the middle of that complex, with the guys setting up shaped charges to destroy the bunkers and me taking photos, when a uniformed North Vietnamese soldier popped out of one of those bunkers screaming, and the bullets started. We just dropped everything and ran. There was one little crossed wire. The infantry hadn't actually assaulted the complex yet. We passed them coming in as we ran for the highway. I never would have gone into that complex without a quick recon if I didn't have that buzz. I was sure I'd used up all my luck on that one. After that, I was useless. I had lost that self-confidence. In a free and responsible search for truth and meaning, what conclusions can we draw from these memories? First, soldiers die in combat because of their courage and self-reliance. They put themselves in harm's way to fulfill the mission as they understand it, and their luck runs out. Second, soldiers die in combat because for some reason, for 1,000 possible reasons, they lose their edge for just that one eye blink which counts. They miss seeing a wire. They don't spot the anomaly of a hard edge in the jungle. They don't take time to sniff, to smell for the enemy. Third, they die because they're in the wrong place at the wrong time. But those answers are jejune. Let me ask instead, what truth and reasoning can we draw? First, weapons of war are lethal things, and they belong in the hands only of warriors, people with training and with an edge. There is no reason on God's earth to engage an unarmed civilian with an automatic weapon or anything close to it. Second, Memorial Day is not just a time to remember a name. It is a time to remember why. Why we went, why we fought, why we died. Third, Memorial Day is a day to remember those who were left behind, those who lost a service member, those for whom the pain will last the length of their lives. Finally, some people need to remember. It is the core of their lives. Equally, some people need to forget in order to survive. Both are valid solutions. Respect them on this Memorial Day. So might it be.
Thank you, Evan. Please stand for our closing hymn, number 96.
Yvonne will play it through.
And now we extinguish the chalice using the words we all know well and in our program. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
We part for this week with words from a poem called Emily. Life's forever, grief is not, so must life always be. Hope goes on, pains outcaught by all eternity. May the blessings of this day be upon you today and forever. Amen.